Now, I want to discuss how my experience was similar. When I was younger, I wanted to be a psychologist, but when I grew older, I wanted to be a designer. I wanted to work on designing cool speakers that revolutionized audio. I wanted to do what Teal Audio or Vandersteen did for speakers with the driver design and the cabinet design and the first order crossovers. I wanted to do the next generation of that. I wanted to revolutionize something the same way that they had done. I wanted to do the same thing with audio electronics, like digital to analog converters and amplifiers. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I figured that a good way to start on that before I went to college for it, again, I thought I'm going to have to go to college for 4 years and become an electrical engineer or electronics engineer, is I'm going to get an internship at a place that works on this type of gear. So I got one, and I actually had two of them. And one of them was at a really, really famous place called Avatar Studios. And they have a lot of high-end gear. I got to work under some of the most amazing technicians in the world. And even though I was only there for a short period of time, about 6, maybe 8 months, they taught me a lot. I worked there 40 to 80 hours a week. And for the first month or two, I scrubbed every toilet, I swept all the garbage, I cleaned puke off the roof. I did, you name it, I did. And I stayed there for quite a while, and I learned a bit. And I worked at another place for much longer than that, once I had a little bit of expertise. And over the years, I started when I was 17, I was able to gain more expertise. But I didn't want to do anything that made money outside of this field. Even though I wasn't making a lot of money, and even though by this point I had some good knowledge. I mean, by 2008, I could replay the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. I could easily, replace switches on an EVRP, which is a pain in the ass. I could figure out why aux1 is leaking in a bus 2. And I could fix one of those original Neve compressors, one of the first ones where they had the auto release on them, like one of the first ones to come out with auto release, which at the time that was a very, very difficult compressor to fix. And I had a decent skill set, but I still wasn't making a lot of money because these services were not in demand. I was coming home with about $300 to $800 a month, which by any standards in any state is not a wage in which you can live. And I wasn't either. When I was 17, 18, and 19 years old, I was living in a very tiny room, half the size of this room, in my dad's apartment because I made no money. And over a long period of time, I made no money doing this. And I didn't want to do anything else. I was stuck in my head that I want to do this. The last thing that I ever wanted to do in my life was, plug something into a computer, troubleshoot computer problems, whether it's viruses, hardware of any kind, even though I was pretty good at it. I didn't want to do that. I had no desire to deal with fixing people's problems, and especially on consumer hardware, I didn't want that to be my life. So I said, no way in hell I'm taking any of these jobs. I want to do this. For 2 or 3 years, I made almost no money. I had virtually no savings. And on November 10th of 2008, when one of the studios that I had worked at decided to go out of business, I had no job. So at this point, I had no savings, and for 2 or 3 years of work, I had some experience and a skill set, but no money to show for it. And I wasn't able to get another job in that field because, again, good luck finding a place that needs their J9000 serviced, and that's actually willing to pay $75 an hour. The only time I had ever made some real money were on the occasions that I had side jobs from referrals, where I made $75 to $90 an hour for 6 to 12 hour time blocks, but those were very few and far between. Now, when I lost that job, I was still working on a session for somebody, since on occasion I also worked as a recording engineer, and I didn't have a copy of Logic because I didn't own a Mac, so I had no way to finish this session. So I decided I'm going to finish this session by purchasing a MacBook Pro off of eBay because I had no money. Now on eBay, a lot of what you buy is broken, and the $500 MacBook Pro that I bought, surprise, surprise, nothing on it actually worked. And now I tried to diagnose the problem. I thought to myself, if I can figure out what's wrong with a 50-year-old equalizer, I can figure out what's wrong with a stupid consumer laptop. So I diagnosed the problem. I purchased the part for $80, and it worked. It worked until I moved it a little bit, and the webcam wire that was not fully inserted, went a little to the side, and it smoked the motherboard along with that webcam board pretty good. I was still able to sell that computer, even though I mentioned that this did not work. You have to just cut that wire to get it out of the machine. What good is it anyway? After it's smoked and the motherboard was smoked, I sold it for about $650. So I had made $70 off of something that I didn't even do a good job on. And I thought to myself, let me try this again. So I buy another machine, and I wind up selling it to somebody after doing the same thing again. Again, all I've done at this point is replace the screen. All I've done is take 2 or 6 screws out, put something in, put them back in, and close it. This does not require a lot of brain power, or any brain power, in my opinion. And I made some money. I was using virtually none of the skill set that I had learned, and I was making money. So I do that, and I don't fuck anything up this time. Now I make $250, and here's where things start to get exciting. Now, I buy another machine for $300 that has a similar problem as the first one. Somebody had done a poor job and fucked up the webcam. Now, I think to myself, let me figure this out. Now, the webcam seems to be powered off of 5 volts. It actually seems to be powered off of a little thingy that, after looking at a schematic and guessing, I figured that's USB. And I have another board nearby, and I measure it, and I see 5 volts at the point where on this board, there's nothing. And I think to myself, huh, this needs 5 volts to work, just like anything that is powered off of USB. A lot of the newer MacBooks have this too. They have a little USB hub that splits the camera and the Bluetooth, and it's powered off of 5 volts. It's pretty common. A mouse is powered off of USB as well. See, this little red light is because of 5 volts coming out of the USB port in the computer. So I honestly don't have a good memory. This was 4 years ago. I believe it was a diode and a resistor, to make sure, and the resistor in place of a fuse, where a fuse could also work in the circuit. There was a diode and a fuse. They were destroyed, completely destroyed. Like, you could not even solder anything to the board because it was just a vacant mess. So I take a wire, go from 5 volts, high up the supply chain on the board, and I put it to this one little point. Now I take a capacitor, another wire, and I put that to ground just so that there's not a lot of ripple voltage. And I put a fuse in front of it, and I have that run to the webcam. And again, this is all kind of, cortical coated onto the board, because there's no place to even solder to, and it actually worked. Now I was able to sell this computer for over $750. So now I had made $400-something off of one machine. At this point, I made $1,000, all off of the same model computer, almost $1,000 bucks. And all I've done is take a couple of screws out, put a couple of screws back in. In this case, again, I'm fixing a similar problem to the screen problem on the same model computer. I only know how to work on one model computer at this point. This is something that keeps other people from starting a business. They think